Hi, and welcome to Matcha with Murad, where I, Murad, talk to other creatives about their process, what drives them to make their art, and anything else that we find interesting. So join me every week to hear a new and inspiring story, and sometimes a quick heart-to-heart from yours truly. On this week's episode of Matcha with Murad, we will be interviewing Ben Marten, who was born in Freeport, Illinois, and he is an actor represented by Payonessa Talent Agency in Chicago. His film at Indie Prize is rated 4 stars by Robert Ebert. Ben is known for his guest starring roles in Chicago Fire and Empire. In 2015, he starred as Ronnie in the play Out of Order at the New Theater Restaurant in Kansas City, as well as, of course, his role in The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain. Ben lives in Northern Illinois with his beautiful wife Sarah and their princess Vivian. Please help me welcome him to the show today. All right. Well, it's nice to actually meet you. We've been emailing for a while now.
Yeah.
How is it now, just like being at home and through the whole year last year? Like, how have you been with all of that?
It's been a struggle for everybody, obviously, but I shouldn't say that. I should put it this way. It's been a struggle as an actor, but it hasn't been a struggle as a man of God or as a follower of Christ.
Right.
I've actually been thriving during this time over the last year, as opposed to letting anything beat me up, which has been pretty cool, actually. I've had an awful lot of good opportunities that God's just put in front of me He's just completely taken care of me and my family the whole time, and I've had nothing to worry about the entire time.
That is so amazing. I love how that happens when it's really needed, and when you're just putting out that energy, usually it comes back to you, which is really cool.
That's exactly correct. Yeah. Well, and it was weird because you can't go anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't feel, I don't know. A lot of people did. They felt trapped, but I didn't feel trapped for some reason. It's all God, really. It's like the truth.
Right. That's actually something I was going to ask you. I was going to ask if you are a homebody, or if this experience made you into more of a homebody.
I am solely because ever since I had a daughter, I've turned into the biggest baby you could ever possibly imagine. So just last weekend, my wife and my daughter went to a water park in Dubuque, Iowa, right in the Mississippi.
That's
awesome. They left me here by myself. And I can count on one hand how many times I've been in my house by myself since my daughter was born. And I can't stand it. I don't like being by myself. I actually got home from church, and I stood in my kitchen looking at my dogs going, what do I do now? I didn't know what to do with myself.
Right. Whereas before, I'm sure you were way more used to like just having your time.
You couldn't keep me home. I was everywhere. Having a kid will do that to you. Mm-hmm.
How old is Vivian now?
She'll be 7 in a month.
Wow.
Yeah. And
okay,
7
that's awesome.
To me feels a lot different than 6 for some reason.
Really? How come?
I don't know. It's just a feeling that I get. I can just tell. I can see, because kids, they change. So like overnight, all of a sudden she'll have a different face, or she'll have a different look, or her body type will change overnight. And now she's turning into quite the little woman instead of the little girl, which is.
That's so cute. And also, like, when they're in elementary school, I feel like they go through the biggest changes just like physically, and middle school for sure.
Oh, don't even talk about middle school. I don't even want to think about middle school.
You're like, please no, stop growing.
Terrified.
How has like your craft with acting been at home? Because I know you said in terms of acting, it's been a big challenge, but how are you kind of getting by with that? Like, have you found some new ways?
It's so weird because I'm the only. I always think, and I feel like I am the only actor, or we call ourselves artists because we are. It's an art. Right. But I'm the only one that only acts. I don't like to write things. I don't like to direct things. I don't like to get behind production. I only want to act. And that's the worst part about that in this time is I'm sitting here just really sitting on my hands, just waiting for my agent to call me and tell me to do something.
Right.
Which is hard. And I really don't like doing stuff from home, because myself and my buddy Leroyce he's another actor in Chicago. I'm the guy, I get into a room, I own it. right away because I love meeting people and getting in front of people and doing it. What do we call this? The self tape. That's an art in itself, and it's not easy to figure out.
So how is it in art? And are you saying just in terms of like filming from home? As like an audio visual person, I can see how that would be challenging if you're like an actor, because you're like, oh, now I have to have perfect sound, perfect visuals. I have to get my like emotion across through the camera.
Well, yeah. Well, you got to set it up. What I love about going to an audition is you walk in and that's all you have to do. You go in, you do it, and then you leave, and you're good.
Right.
If you're at home, you're judging how you're doing it more than you would judge it if you're in the room, because
that makes total sense.
Well, because you got to leave it in the room. Everything that you do, I always like to tell people, if you don't walk out of the room exhausted, then you didn't do something right.
Right.
Here, you're exhausting yourself because you can do as many takes as you want. And I don't like doing that. I like to do it on the first take, get it done, walk away, and then see you later.
Kind of like black out and not know what you really did, but you're like, I felt good about it. That kind of thing.
It's not up to you anyways. And this kind of leaves a little bit of that, the mystery of, not being up to you. It kind of takes that away a little bit, which has been the harder thing for me to get out of. Right. But I'm getting better at it, I think. I like to think I'm getting better at it.
You're just kind of developing a new skill, I guess. Like it's the new norm.
If you're not challenging yourself, then you're not really doing much. And it's nice to be able to be challenged.
It's very, very true. I can relate in a way that I do music, so it's not acting. Like I'm not recording self-tapes, but I do feel that shift from being able to do real performances and then also being able to be in the studio with my team versus like remotely, where I'm sitting in my parents' basement and King is like all the way in Chicago and we're like sending ideas back and forth. It's a totally different vibe. And I completely understand what you mean by being your own worst critic, and you'll do it like 50 times versus like if you were in an audition, you did it one time and it was over and you feel much better about it.
Yeah. Because here, my wife is my best critic, and she's the one that I get to read with me a lot. And she'll tell me, she doesn't mince words with me. She'll tell me if that sucked or if it was good. And she's always the one that she knows which take was the best, no matter what. And she's the one that has to tell me eventually to stop, shut up, it's done, you did it.
Right.
It's time to go.
The funny thing
mainly, sometimes I think because she's got other stuff to do, but also because she loves me and she cares.
She is she an artist as well, or is she?
She's a teacher.
Okay. So it's probably also seeing your perfectionism versus being the one like doing it. They're like just calm down. Your first take was just as good. Like just go with it, kind of thing. That's awesome. So is she kind of a part of your creative routine, is like having her there to kind of be your second eye, I guess?
No, I don't think so. She'll feel it when I do. Like I'll know what take is the best, and she'll know what take is just by, like, we don't have to talk about it. It's just she can tell because she's seen me do this for so long now. Yeah. It's it's hard to get her to realize that, because she tries really hard to read, and it's not easy. Like it's not easy to just read off camera for somebody. And if she messes up a little bit, she's hard on herself, which I think is funny.
That's hilarious. She's like, dang it. That's funny. I mean, a lot of people have gone back home to like their family homes. And did you guys have to relocate from the pandemic, or were you kind of already set in your place?
I've always lived in Freeport. I've never moved.
Oh, nice. So you were never in Chicago. Nice.
I like to work in Chicago, and I like to come back. It's too many people to live there for me.
I get it.
Well, we were thinking about it a long time ago before we got pregnant, but and I know it's only 2 hours, but I like being able to have, like, my mother-in-law and my mother, we're all still here, and her cousins are all here. And I like the idea of my daughter growing up within arm's reach of her grandparents and her cousins. Right. And it's pretty, and to tell you the truth, the cost of living out here is, all my buddies in Chicago, that what they pay for their apartment, and I show them what I pay for my house. That kind of makes them want to throw up every time.
I totally get it, because I was in Chicago for 6 years, as like a college student on my own at 18. That was like the first experience I had with rent. And I was like, okay, I guess this is how it goes. Like, I was just like, oh. And of course, on top of that, like my college is screwing me over. They're just
What do you mean?
charging us crazy amounts of money for the dorms. I did research after my first year in the dorms and I was like, oh my gosh, the apartment right next door is cheaper and it's like nicer. And then they were kind of like packing us like sardines in the rooms too. Like it wasn't even our own bedroom. We were like, two beds in a dorm basically. So I totally get that. And then coming back to KC, I think it comes with age, being willing to be back where your family is and stuff like that, because this was the first time I came back to KC and I was like, it's kind of nice here. Like I haven't seen my family in like a solid, like I only saw them maybe twice a year for a couple days. So I was like, I don't know, I'm just weirdly at peace with being in Kansas City. And then I looked at apartments and I was like, wow.
It's not cheap in Kansas City either.
It's not cheap, but it's not Chicago. I'll say that. So what was your profession in Chicago like before the pandemic? Because I'm always curious. I know a lot of shows come out of Chicago Fire, Empire. So I'm just wondering, like, I know the CineSpace, is that what it's called? CineSpace? It's like so many shows were coming out of there. So what was it like before the pandemic?
CineSpace has turned into it's the biggest soundstage studios in North America besides LA. It's massive. Yeah, they bought up like 5 city blocks, and it's all these huge old steel factories that they turned into. They've got like 25 sound stages now.
Wow.
And it's a complex. It's literally like you can't get in. You got to pass through all these gates to get and they shoot anywhere from 6 to like 9 pilots a year.
Mm-hmm.
But also in CineSpace itself, they shoot all the Chicago PD, Med and Fire and Empire, and they shoot The Chi, and they shoot on Showtime The Chi, and they shoot at any given time. There's like 12 shows shooting there, plus movies. And before all this crap hit, I was auditioning a couple times a week, just because there's that much stuff to do in Chicago. And I had this is another God thing. I needed one more job to qualify for because I get my health insurance through SAG.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you only can have insurance through SAG if you make enough money. I needed one more job, and it wasn't even one more job. I needed like $500 more or something like that in earnings. And my residuals, I didn't see any residuals coming through, so I was getting a little nervous.
Right.
But then getting nervous on top of that in January is when all the COVID stuff hit. So then they started talking to us about how everything's shutting down and everything's going. I'm like, son of a. I'm gonna be out of that, because that's my family's insurance. It's huge. That's huge. But no, so God, out of nowhere, there's a movie called Candyman coming out. It was supposed to come out last summer. They shot it in Chicago in 2019, and I saw a preview for it, or like a trailer. They put out a trailer on Twitter that day, and I watched the trailer. I said, man, that looks pretty good. And then later that day, my agent calls me up for an audition for Candyman, and I said, I called her up. She said, I just saw the trailer. They're not shooting anymore. This has got to be a joke. They said, no, they had to do some pickups because they wanted to write in a couple more characters because the story didn't pan out at the beginning.
Right.
And they gave me one of the roles in Candyman for the one of those random ones that they had to do shoot the pickup in March. But that almost got shut down because of the pandemic, because while we were shooting that,
because March was really the time that everything shut down. Yeah.
We were shooting it, and then everything else shut down. CineSpace shut down. They closed their doors. They flew in a second team into Chicago, and we shot on 2 sound stages to shoot 3 weeks worth of stuff into 1 week.
3 weeks of stuff into 1 week.
It was nuts. It's because they had to get it done. If they didn't, they just would have scrapped it.
So being a man of faith, you're like, this happened for a reason.
It was it, yeah. I was asking God for something, and he said, here you go. Don't worry about it.
I love that so much. That's so awesome.
And it was in the 9th hour, because I needed that job to cover that money by March 31st. It was the last thing shooting in Chicago. If I didn't do that, it would have been. So are they starting to shoot again? Or when do you see that picking up again? They're actually shooting again. So all the Chicago shows are shooting. I shot a day on PD.
Nice.
Last month.
That probably felt good to get back.
No, it was weird because the protocols now are nuts. You can't no more than one person in a makeup trailer at a time. You can't be anywhere near anybody. It's just eerie because usually everybody's on top of each other. We're all talking. Everybody's right next to each other. But it's just not like that anymore.
Right. And it probably makes a difference in just the way you guys feel connected to each other in the roles too, I would imagine, right? Like you don't feel like you can connect as much, or
I don't know, not necessarily that. I don't think it goes that far.
that's good.
But you do stay farther away. It's just weird not being able to stand right next to people while you're talking to them.
Yeah.
Having your mask on until the last possible second before you start shooting.
Right.
Stuff like that. Beyond blessed and highly favored because I've got stuff to look forward to. So I've got Candyman.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Kenneth Chamberlain.
Mm-hmm.
I've got For Profit. That's another movie that King and Garrett did the.
Yeah, I sang some vocals on it actually.
Oh, do you really?
I was going to ask you about that later. I want to know more about what that movie is about, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, yeah, well, I got that. I've got Chicago PD. I mean, I'm more than blessed to be able to actually have stuff. No, I've got a buddy that moved out to San Francisco. He booked a role in. There's a Harry Potter play. 18-month contract. They opened. They had to shut down 2 weeks later because of COVID. So he's just out. He moved his family out there. He's got a wife and 3 kids. They all moved out there together. He's been stuck out there on unemployment for now. It's running on like a year.
Oh my gosh!
And he can't audition for anything. And I talk to him every now and then. He just feels lost, and I feel terrible for the guy.
That's horrible.
Imagine and there's so many actors out there that are sitting in the same predicament. Because if you don't use this, if you don't, as an actor, if you don't do it, if you don't feel it, then you kind of feel like it goes away.
Right.
And it not necessarily it doesn't, but you feel like it goes away. And that's just the worst feeling ever. Yeah.
So can you tell me about what For Profit is about? Because I didn't really, I was trying to look it up.
It's about, what's the tagline say? It says, a struggling entrepreneur gets visited by an archangel and is chosen by God to not only save his life, but save the town that he lives in. So because a lot of times the roles that I get to audition for, no matter what, a lot of drama gets shot around Chicago. Mm-hmm. And dramatic roles are fun. One of my favorite role to play is a bad guy.
Oh, interesting.
It's so much fun. It's so much more fun than playing a good guy for some reason. But this was my first foray into playing an actual good guy. But and I'm the lead, and it was his name's Damon Fisher, and he had a problem. Well, his dad passed away. He was supposed to be a doctor, and his dad died. His dad was a doctor too, and he decides to give up on faith, and he gives up on being a doctor, and he decides to start his own business, being like a organic, eat nothing but natural stuff that'll save your life type thing. Mm-hmm. But his business is failing, and his wife is working to pay all the bills, and he's just going down. But he's visited by this angel, and he doesn't believe it that God's there to help him, because I forgot a main fact. One big point: he's got a demon that's talking to him the entire time.
Oh, that's kind of cool, so, actually.
The first scenes in the movie, you see he's actually at therapy with his wife, mm-hmm. and he's talking to her, and they're going back and forth. But this demon's just walking around screaming at him the whole time, trying to dictate what he says, which he kind of does the whole time. Mm-hmm. But nobody else can see the demon. He's just, because my character, he's in his head the whole time. He's really got a demon that's just been beating him up ever since his dad died. Right. That was the hard to shoot. Playing a guy that's got a guy yelling at him the entire time. Nobody else can. He's not supposed to give up that he's actually talking to this demon the whole time. Right. It's kind of like a weird balance of hearing him and then not trying to react. Oh, it's insane. Yeah. Especially because it's my buddy Enrico, who's also in Kenneth Chamberlain. Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay. So his production company did both movies. Got it. But he's an actor too. So he figured out the way to do it. He's an actor. He's got a production company, and he's in the movies that he produces, which is kind of brilliant, which is good for him. Yeah. Yeah. But then it's such a hard movie to explain, because he ends up kind of listening to the angel, because then they're both going at him at the same time, but they're never in the same room at the same time. Okay. If the angel's with him, you'll notice that the angel's with him because the room's a little bit brighter. If the demon's with him, you'll notice the demon's with him because the room's a little bit darker. They did a great job with the lighting and the cinematography with it. But in the end, he eventually figures it out and saves the town and saves his marriage. And
Can you relate to that on any like point because you are a man of faith? Like, did that role hit you?
I battled for a long time with like anxiety, and I never knew it until I actually saw somebody and he told me I've got an anxiety issue. So I can understand it from that perspective, where you're constantly thinking about what's wrong with you without knowing what's wrong with you.
Right.
Always trying to figure out what's going on, why do I have this? Because I was always one of those guys that could almost see myself. I projected myself doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Once I found faith, I realized that it wasn't me projecting; it was myself. It was just, it really is the devil. He comes there to lie, cheat, and destroy. And
Mm-hmm.
I was letting something like that impact my life in a way that I didn't need to.
Without even realizing it, right? That's the scary part about it. It's like you don't.
You don't know he's there. There's a war going on, and that's
Right.
and you don't know it until you know it, and I can understand. I can relate to that character from that point of view for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
And how was it different than your role in the killing of Kenneth Chamberlain? Was that a big way different?
Well, to be honest, I never thought of myself as like a method actor,
Mm-hmm.
like one of those guys that lives the character.
Yep.
But for that role, I really did, and I didn't know that I was doing it. I was told later by a friend of mine that that's what I was doing, but because I played a guy. My character and Frankie Faison, the guy that plays Kenneth Chamberlain, were the only ones that were actually based on a real person.
Right.
And my guy that I played was such a bad dude, just a horrible bigot, racist. I mean, came from a horrible family. He's a murderer. He was okay with murdering people. And
Right.
for me to get to that moment with that guy, I dove down pretty deep to get to there. And but I'm glad that I did, because it really worked out. There were people that after the premiere, like they were staying away from me. They were making sure they stayed 5 feet away from me when they were walking.
Wow.
Which was uncomfortable, but then I realized that I did it pretty well.
Yeah. If your part was that believable.
Yeah. And it was even the sound guy, Scott Jennings, who did the sound for both Prophet and Kenneth Chamberlain. I forget who told me. Maybe it wasn't King. I forget. He said he was worried about it because I had to do some ADR for it, some voiceover.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was worried about emailing me because he thought I was going to be just a total prick and not easy to work with, but Enrico and Mark kept saying, "No, he's a good guy, man. You like him. It's no problem."
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
he literally was scared to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, it is acting, guys. Calm down.
Because I love people.
Yeah.
The one guy, one of the producers for Kenneth Chamberlain, when we were auditioning, I walked in and I just wanted that role so bad because it's a bad dude, and it was I just like I said, I like playing the bad guys. I walked in. As soon as I walked out later, he told me this. He said why he knew that I was perfect for the role. So after I booked it, we all got together at one of the producers' houses in Chicago, and just to get together and talk and chat. And he told me later that after that meeting, he told Enrico and the other producers and the director, he said, "I think we chose the wrong guy, man." And they said, "Why?" He said, "The guy's too nice. He can't play that. He can't play that bad guy, man. He can't. I think we chose the wrong guy. He can't do it." Because
you're like,
"Oh, yes, happy. I'm he's a nice guy."
That's hilarious. So how do you like prepare for the different roles like that? Because
I'm a huge preparation guy. So like I like to, like if I like for those 2 scripts, I memorize the entire script because I want to know because I'm in the whole thing. So I want to know the ins and outs of every single thing. I don't want to be surprised about anything.
Right.
So, and I don't like to formulate a character without the script, because I was like, the script makes the character. You don't make up the character in your mind, and so the script is there with you. So as I go through the script, I like to go through like 10 pages at a time and then just figure out the character as I go and find out the nuances and then off of that, after 30, 40 pages, then I can figure out some of the guy's backstory.
That you can kind of create on your own.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I find this so interesting because that's literally why I created this podcast. I love hearing like the creative process of other creatives.
it's so much fun, and it's so much. People don't realize I had a buddy one time said, "Well, that's not hard work. You just get up there and act. You
Yeah.
don't." Yeah, it's not. No, it's not just getting up there and act. No, it's diving into that. That's that mental work when you're sitting there at a table reading a script and figuring out. You don't figure out how to deliver a line. You figure out. I always tell people that I don't turn into the character. The character. I like to make the character turn into me.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, I'm not reaching for anything.
You're pulling it out of like places from you, you're saying? Like you
No. I just like a lot of times people they'll project a character as opposed. What I like to do is just let the character become me.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, the character wants to be like me as opposed to me wanting to be like the character. That way the character is. I had one guy tell me one time. He said, "Ben, it's you don't. I don't understand it. You just look. It's like you're not trying." And I said, "That's the goal because I don't want to try while I'm out there. I just want to be natural. That
Mm-hmm.
way, because it's not it's not like you're on stage where you got to project anything. You're on there. That's external. Everything on camera is so internal that if you can't just breathe the character as opposed to shouting the character, then you're not doing it right."
right, you don't ever want to look like you're trying if you're acting.
And that's the big difference between movie and TV. So I would much rather
Okay.
do movies than I would television because television is so much more about hitting the mark
Mm-hmm.
than film because they got like Chicago. Let me think. What was the biggest role I had in? My character Kehoe. So I'm a firefighter on Chicago Fire and PD.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his name's Kehoe. He's got some backstory. He's a millionaire that just likes to firefight. Him and his brothers inherited a farm and got a bunch of money, but he just stays firefighting because he likes it.
Right.
But that's no matter how much I love those lines and no matter how much I love those scenes, they still got to fit it into 38 minutes. So
Right.
when you're doing your scenes, it's fun, you're doing it, but it's not really about the art, or the work. It's more about making the work fit in the time frame.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And you can feel it while you're doing it because
Mhm.
you know exactly what's going on.
It's a little more stressful maybe too because everyone's
It
trying to
is,
get
yeah.
it. Okay.
It is, yeah, because you only got 12 days to shoot a show, whereas a movie, you got a whole day to shoot 2 pages, and you
Right.
want to get it right. And you can relax with it a lot more, and you get a lot more liberties with how you can take your character to where you want to take it.
And then even just like if you do something really cool in the movie that they didn't expect, they can kind of make the creative decision to keep it, right? Like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
so you can make little changes as you go.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Hmm.
Whereas TV would be just more probably rehearsal too on top of that. Like you have to rehearse really hard because you not more than a movie, but just rehearse the marks more, I guess.
You're right. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
all about hitting the mark.
Yeah.
If you don't hit the
Interesting.
mark, then they got to say cut and you got to start over. Whereas movies, the mark can be, you got about 5 feet where you can land the mark. And if you're not
Right.
right on it, then they'll adjust to you as opposed to you adjusting to them.
So with the killing of Kenneth Chamberlain, what was it like reading the script for the first time and then after you read the whole thing and developed? Like what was that experience like? Because I know that was an intense character.
I did some research on the actual, because Dave Meidel and Enrico, the produced it, they told me about the situation. They sent me a packet because it was a low budget movie,
Mhm.
and they sent me a packet on what their purposes were, why they wanted to do it, how they were going to do it, because that situation is so real, and it's
Right.
so. I mean, the guy Kenneth Jr. He's still fighting to get justice for his dad. I mean, if you look him up on Instagram, Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. He's every day. He's still at that courthouse. He's still found in White Plains, New York.
I've actually seen his Instagram. It's really
Yeah, and he's a great guy. He's such an intelligent human being.
Mhm.
But if you don't do it right, then you're kind of disgracing the cause and what you're doing it for.
Right.
But Dave and Enrico, they had such a strong idea about how they wanted to do this and why they wanted to do it. They wanted to do it not to make a ton of money. They wanted to do it to bring light to a situation that doesn't have any light to it.
Mhm.
And we shot this before the situation in America got really bad.
I was just gonna say the timing.
It was, and because I didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how bad it was
Mm-hmm.
until I shot this movie.
Have you found yourself becoming more of an advocate for the whole movement now that you shot the movie? Like you have more heart in the.
I think I've got more. It's opened up my eyes more
Mm-hmm.
because I come from Freeport, Illinois. Believe it or not, is one of the most diverse towns in Illinois.
Right.
And because we're so close to Wisconsin, we're so close to Iowa, but it's so racially diverse that I grew up in a not like there's I know a lot of people that grew up around this neighborhood that didn't like there's small towns around here that didn't even have a black person in their town.
Mm-hmm.
But me, I growing up, my best friends, we always the teacher in school always said it was funny because the three Miss May in my first grade class, there was the three. You'd always see those three kids, a black head, a white head, and a black head, walking down the hall holding hands together every day. John Palmer, myself, and my buddy Ivan Pruitt, because it was I had no idea that what racial tension was because I never saw it.
You grew up in a place where you didn't have to experience it as much.
Well, and I think it's so easy as a white person to not pay attention to it or know it because you don't want to know it. But then, well, as you get older, you see how difficult it is for those same two guys that were my best friends in first grade. Now that we're older, if we walk in a room together, they're going to look different. They're going to be looked at different than I am, no matter how we grew up.
And you grew up with them. It's like it's that opens your eyes even more too, because this person you've like loved and cared about your whole life, you're seeing them and how the world sees them.
It did, and that movie really it opened up my eyes a lot more to that fact, and it's sad and it's terrible, and I hope I just that's why I put so much effort into that movie, into that role, because I did not want to let anybody down.
It's a heavy role to fill because
it is.
You're telling a really important story too.
I mean, and I was such a bad guy. I guess I didn't even know I was doing it. I would, before we you do certain takes, I'm a big meditation guy.
Ooh, we can talk about that for sure.
Awesome, man. So I would go I had a little room that I set up for myself that I would go in and do a little 1 minute power meditation just to bring myself into the character. And I guess I would walk out and I'd be saying cuss words, dropping F-bombs, looking at people just mad.
You would
because I was turning into the character.
Yeah,
I was turning into the character before I did it. And I didn't even know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because my buddy one time sent me a picture before we were shooting the climax of the movie where I murder the guy. I'm just in a room by myself with a light and I'm just so hot. We were shooting in August and I'm sweating and I'm so pissed. And I didn't even think the guy looked like me, but it was me.
Wow.
Doing the role. And I would love so much to play more roles like that.
Because I feel like as an actor, that would be the most rewarding thing, is to really transform into a completely different person than you would ever be.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Well, and then it wasn't hard to get, like, my wife, she can tell, because I would always, part of me would turn into a character when it leads up to time to shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell it, but she could tell it. She could tell I was thinking about it a lot or something, but I got out of it easy enough. As soon as I walked off set, I was fine. I'd walk out and get in the car and call my wife and daughter, and I'd be good to go.
That's pretty cool, because I know you use more of a method acting with this role, and I've heard stories of it, kind of taking a toll on the actors, because it's like, you're embodying like so much of that person that it's hard to you like for that whole time. Do you feel like you were still kind of in a different place though the whole time you were recording that movie or filming that movie, or you really were just able to snap right back out of it and then get right back into it?
It was because that was 6 months before I was saved. Was when I shot that movie. So I was a completely different person to start with.
Wow.
But so I was essentially, because we shot that in Chicago and I stayed in Chicago, so I was away from my family, but I was in a good mindset where I would walk on set and I could feel it. I got myself in the mindset where as soon as I walked into that building where we shot that movie, I just kind of breathed in the character and I was ready to go. Because of the preparation, because I spent a month in that script making sure that I knew every single section and every single part, where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the preparation made it that much easier to get in and out of the character.
I'm sure that made I just know as a musician myself, like being prepared can make literally the world of a difference. Like if I go on stage and I know I'm not prepared, my energy is a lot more nervous. I'm trying to like pull it off on a whim, but being prepared as a creative, I think, in my process at least, I have to be fully prepared inside and out, and then I can be free on stage, I guess. So,
Because you feel yourself reaching.
yeah.
You know what I mean? You feel yourself.
Reaching.
That's the
Just
same
like
way
what
if
you
I'm
said.
not, like for an audition, if I don't have it there, you don't, it's not organic. And if it's the same thing with stage, if you see somebody that's, singing that's not doing it organically, then you can't get into it.
Feel it. You're
Because
like,
the idea,
ooh.
because the idea is you're doing it for the audience. So
Mhm.
if the audience can't completely forget that they're watching something
Yeah.
because it doesn't take them completely out of their moment, then you're not doing it right. You can't do that as a performer without being completely, because it's as an actor. So if you don't, like, I notice when I'm into it, when I completely we call it in the moment. When you get to that moment,
Yep.
you're not having fun until you're in that moment.
Totally. You're
You're
forcing kind
thinking
of
as
until
yourself.
yeah.
And that's where I like to say I like to make the character become me, because then I'm not thinking about it. The character is.
Mhm.
Then you're just in it and you're just having fun and it's just ready to go.
I love that idea, and it also kind of like for me reminds me of meditation where my brain doesn't necessarily want me to be in that state. Like my brain tries to fight going into like not thinking, but then nothing feels better than when you are in the moment, you're not thinking and you're truly just I guess feeling everything that you're doing. So you
That
said
meditation
that
moment is just like that. When you get to that, oof.
yeah.
There, I just got my mindfulness reminder.
Oh, you did?
I do the Calm app. Do you do Calm?
I have been doing Insight Timer. I've been trying that one out because you can like, I don't know, I've never tried Calm and a lot of my friends really like it, but I saw Insight Timer and someone was, I don't remember who it was, I was watching someone talk about it and you have all these like different options of like different themes and different like time limits and they have all these like freelance people that do the guided meditations on there. So I don't know, it's like, I think it's kind of cool because you can like support certain people that you really like and stuff.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, and it's free.
Check it out.
So
Oh, nice.
there's that too.
It's always nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of that role that you played and how some people wouldn't even get near you after they watched the movie, what was your wife's reaction to that after she saw
We this will tell you how. We're in Austin at the premiere, and we're all watching it. And this movie is the only way I can describe it is it's awesomely terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's so well done for that budget. I can't believe people it's so well done.
Mm-hmm.
So we're watching it. You can't talk the whole time because you're so caught up in the moment. And there was a moment because it builds. I mean, it's like a pot of boiling water. As soon as the movie starts, when we walk into the building, that's when they put the pot on the stove and then they crank it up. And by the time it boils, you can tell.
Oh wow.
Everybody in that audience was so quiet. There was a moment towards the end where I'm sitting here, my buddy Steve O'Connell's right here, and my wife's right here, and King's right there, and we're all.
Mm-hmm.
I reached over and put my arm around I put my hand on my wife's leg. She grabbed my hand and moved it off. Put it back on my leg. She couldn't at that moment handle my hand being on her leg.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
At the end, and then when the movie got over, I'll never forget, it was such a moment. Steve O'Connell, who plays the sergeant, he's sitting right next to me. Garrett Belo sitting right next to him.
Mm-hmm.
My wife sitting next to me, and King sitting next to her. We all sat there with our arms around each other and just bawled. Everybody, the whole entire audience was just. You did hear it?
King did tell me about that.
I mean, we're all sitting there. The whole audience is just crying. All you hear is sniffling and weeping, and my character chews gum the whole time. Okay, so he's just a jerk that I'm smacking on gum. One of the jokes with Cameron Petchamal, he's the DP, the director of photography. He said we had this joke that the gum created its own character. My gum chewing was its own character because it was so much. He said, you're such an asshole. He kept saying it with you're chewing your gum, man. I just want to punch you in the face the whole time. So I didn't realize it. I was chewing gum at the premiere, and then we got up to talk afterwards. And I went up there. I still had the gum in my mouth. and I'm up there chewing, and we're talking about it. I went back and sat down. My wife said, "You gotta spit your gum out, you jerk."
That's
She said all these
hilarious.
people had to sit there thinking it there. Yep, he is that guy. He is
Yeah.
that prick that was on screen.
That's funny. Is that something you created for the character, or was that in the script too?
It was actually written in the script,
Oh, nice.
which
Okay.
which I love because I don't like to bring something to the. I actually chewed go in the audition, and I don't like to do stuff like that unless it's written in there because you don't want to.
Right. You don't want to like
Directors and writers, they get a little touchy sometimes if you're trying to.
I could see that, especially in the audition. You're just
Oh, yeah.
creating your own whole thing. So yeah, so that's so funny because I said like I know you're a religious person and I consider myself spiritual and I try to meditate on a daily basis for my music because I swear there's something and you've struggled with anxiety too, so you probably
yeah.
understand this. I realized I was struggling with it really bad probably a year ago. And I didn't ever feel it until I got a restaurant job and it just came out of nowhere, like that like instant physical anxiety. So I started meditating and it's helped me with my music so much. And for me, I think it is that idea of like training your brain to not think really helps with when I'm singing and I can kind of get into that place a little bit easier. What do you find like is that kind of the same thing for you in terms of meditating on set?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, the anxiety that I've always experienced, it's never been part of acting for me. Acting for me is such a release, and it's such a
yeah.
it's what God made me to do, and so I can just feel it the whole time. I know when I'm there, that's what I'm supposed to do. So the meditation on set for me is more so just to get my mind into the character as opposed to get my mind off of anxiety. Whereas in real life, I meditate for anxiety purposes, just to
Right.
get myself to relax and get the thoughts to calm down in your head a little bit. And I didn't meditate until I had a breakdown a while back.
Right. So you were not always a super religious person.
No, I was the most. If you would have talked to me 3 years ago, you wouldn't have thought for a second that I would ever come anywhere near to saying anything good about God or anything.
Interesting.
When I was shooting, quick story, when I was shooting Kenneth Chamberlain, I remember I told you I would walk out of the room and I'd be cussing and I'd be dropping F-bombs and I'd be just going nuts. Uh, in December, we shot that in July. In December of that same year, it was 2018, I think. No, 2019.
Okay.
2018. I can't remember. 2018. It was 2018.
It's all a blur at this point.
Yeah, December 2018. I went to an audition in Chicago. It was for a commercial, and I'm sitting there waiting, and Tom McElroy, who's in Kenneth Chamberlain, he plays one of the sergeants. He's the tall, older white guy. And we got set up to audition together to play father and son, and we're just chatting, going back and forth, and he says, "So you're gonna get all excited and start dropping a bunch of F-bombs and cussing and pissing before you walk into audition?" And I said, and that was December 12th or 13th, and I got saved November 1st
Wow.
that year. It's a total supernatural thing. I'll tell you about it if you want me to. But
I would love to hear about it. Sorry, I've been making this go longer than it should.
No, that's okay.
I'm having a great time. So
me too. So he asked me that, and I said, "Tom, I haven't said a cuss word in like a month and a half." And he looks at me and says, "Why?" I said, I was saved. And his face went white, and he couldn't breathe for a solid, just for like 5 seconds. And he said, "Ben, I prayed so hard for you while we were shooting Kenneth Chamberlain because I knew that you were missing something." Because he's a devout Christian, and he said he couldn't breathe, and he looks up and he says, and he starts crying. He goes, "That's prayer works."
oh my gosh,
And he said
that's amazing.
at that second he needed that so bad. So then, but we didn't care. We both blew the audition. We were terrible because we were thinking about something else. So we ended up getting in the car. I drove him back to his neighborhood, and we were talking because he said because he prayed so hard for me because he knew that there was something more that I was supposed to be doing. He knew that guy that was cussing and swearing and stuff like that, that's not who I'm meant to be. It's okay to be a method actor, but that's not who you're, because he knew I had a young child and I had a family to take care of. My wife started teaching at a Christian school 3 months after my daughter was born. And my daughter ended up going to the Christian school, to preschool, and my wife found her way. She was in the religion back when she was younger, but she found her way back to faith, back to Christ by working at the Christian school.
Wow.
And she started going to it's a non-denominational church here in Freeport. It's all about the New Testament, all about grace, all about how you are worthy, not that you aren't worthy, about, God loves you, God loves you, God loves you, all about love and grace. So she started going to that church and taking Vivian, and she asked me if it was okay. I said, that's fine, but don't you ever expect me to go.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to know anything about it.
Yeah.
And she had been going for 3 years, since Vivian was like a year and a half. She came home every day and she was just so happy about it. And Vivian was so happy about what she was learning and because our church is all about kids too. So from the moment they're infants to the moment they get into high school, it's just impacting them and showing them the love of God. I could just see a change in my wife and my daughter. And my daughter loved it so much, but I said, that's fine. Just don't ever expect me to go. And she said, out of nowhere, one day, if she went to church for 3 years, I was in my kitchen one day, and out of nowhere, I got punched as hard as I could in the back of the head. This is no joke. I fell down flat on the ground, started bawling my eyes out, stood up, and I heard God say, Ben, it's time.
Wow, that just gave me chills.
My wife was playing. I told her, I had to tell her it was okay if she played a Christian song in the house. That's how much I disliked religion and disliked faith. And it was Yahweh by Ren Collective. And I stood up and I'm bawling my eyes out and I'm looking around and I don't know what's going on. And when they say when the veil was lifted?
Yeah.
Everything was different. The lights were different. The colors were different. The sounds were different. I knew I'd been completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
I walked out in the living room and I started bawling and I was just crying tears. And I looked at my wife and I said, when are we going to church? And since then I have been on what they call on fire. I get on stage and I talk sometimes at church. I lead the elementary kids, the 1st through the 5th graders, in their lessons every week. It's so much fun. That's so giving, and so I get more out of that than the kids do. I was up on stage one time and I gave my testimony.
Mm-hmm.
I told everybody about it, and afterwards somebody came up to me and said, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but at our church we got prayer cards. So if you got somebody that you want to be prayed for, you just fill out the card, and then we have teams that pray twice a week at our church for people that need prayer. And this woman came up to me and said, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but your wife wrote on her connection card every week that she to pray that I would be saved. So because she didn't want to go to heaven without me.
Oh, that's heavy.
And and I've told that story to so many people since, and it's given so much hope to people that are praying for the same thing. They're praying for their spouse the same way my wife prayed for me for 3 years, and God,
because she
said,
knew you needed it, and she knew.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so heavy. I love that. I've heard of stories like that before, actually, because the same thing happened to my dad, which is crazy, and he was just like you. I've always been somewhere in the middle, honestly, because my mom had me going since I was really young, but she didn't start me young enough, if that makes sense. So I was already at the age where I was like, why do I have to do this? Like, I was kind of like, why do I have to be here? Instead of like, if I was younger, I would have been put in like small classrooms where they would actually talk to you about it. She just kind of sat us in church, and we just had to kind of like sit there for an hour.
And this is what you're supposed to do. Yep.
Exactly. Instead of like giving me the whole lesson. So then I actually got baptized at like 12, and I had to do all those classes, and I really liked them. Like I understood it way more, and I got into Young Life. I don't know if you know what Young Life is, but it's like our kind of like religious group in high school. So I did
like
that.
A youth group type thing? Yeah.
Yeah,
we call it Crave Youth. Ours is Crave Youth.
Right. So, and I had just like the coolest leaders, I guess, where I would ask them probably offensive things. Like I was like, so, you believe there's a heaven, like an actual place up there? Like, and they were just so cool about explaining it to me that I was like, oh, this is really cool. But my dad literally had a moment like you where he was coming home one night after like a night of partying, because I have young parents, and someone literally started talking to him, and he's like, you can believe me or you cannot believe me, but there is definitely something up there that that is in charge. So that's really cool that you had a similar experience like that.
Yeah.
Cool. So I always want to do kind of like a little part of like we have the connection of King scoring for Profit and for The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain. So how do you think that music and film affects each other?
It's so important to have if it's so important, and I know this solely because I did a movie called Dead Awake.
Mm-hmm.
It was it's myself and Rose McGowan. I don't know, you're probably too young to know Rose McGowan, and Amy Smart and Nick Stahl. They were big in the in the early 2000s.
Okay.
They the score for that movie made that movie so bad.
Really?
It was such a bad score. I hope that guy's not. I hope he doesn't. He's the nice guy that did the score, but it was so because you watch some movies that are so well, okay, the score. All right, this is an obvious one, but Frozen. Those movies are so unbelievable because the music is so
good.
impactful. It's
So
so
good.
unbelievable. Those movies. I mean, I would rather sit down and watch a Frozen movie than I would any other movie because of the score,
Yeah.
because of the music. Whereas some movies, it's so bad it can set such a bad tone for because no matter what, if that sound keeps you going and it can draw emotions out of you that
Mm-hmm.
more so than the words.
Mm-hmm. It
Like,
does.
and
That's
it
the
doesn't even
thing.
have to be you know, a sensitive scene. It could be an action film where the music is so right there with you, and you've got you know,
Mhm.
you see yourself, you're leaning into the screen more because of the music. It's not because of the words, it's
Yeah.
because of the music. It's such an important part.
Yeah, I think of action and I think of thriller. Like thriller is so I don't know if you ever watched the movie. I'm trying to think of what streaming service it's on. I think it's on Amazon or Hulu. But Midsummer. I don't know if
Midsummer, I haven't seen, no.
Midsummer. Oh my gosh. The like I realized halfway through the movie that the music was making me so on edge. It was I don't even know how to explain the score. It was like really dissonant. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Dissonant string chords the whole time. So they're
Really?
just like
So
slightly
you're
off pitch, and
nervous
you're
the
just
entire
sitting
time.
there. Yeah, I highly recommend. I mean, that movie was really creepy. I'm not gonna lie, but the score is like a prime example of like the main reason why I felt really weird the whole movie.
King and Garrett did such an amazing job with Kenneth
Yeah.
Chamberlain. It's that when you say you were on the side of your seat, the reason that we were sitting there in that theater the whole time, that because it builds up so much, and that his score just keeps it so so you don't take a breath for 90 minutes. It's you know, it's unbelievable.
He didn't they win like best score or something like that?
Yeah, they
before?
did. They had they won all sorts of stuff. I can't remember which
So
one won
cool.
it. Yeah, I just can't wait till people see it.
I
And it's supposed to
cannot
be
wait.
Voltage is supposed to be distributing it pretty soon here.
Okay, well, the second it's out, I'm sitting down and watching it because I had a couple opportunities to, and I didn't take them, and I feel so stupid because I want to see it so bad.
You will. Morgan Freeman's production company signed on to,
That's what I
and
heard.
that's for me as an actor, knowing that Morgan Freeman saw something and he liked it enough to want to be a part of it, and I happen to have a big part in it. Is
Yeah.
like because he's on like my having a connection to that dude because he's on my that's part of my Mount Rushmore for actors. So
Okay.
it's like him, Denzel, Tom Hanks, and I got to throw in like Christopher Walken just because I'm drawn to the dude, or like, you know what I mean, or like
Yeah.
De Niro and Pacino, and
Yeah.
but it's so cool
Yeah,
as an actor.
that is cool to find out. And then obviously you had one of the most impactful parts, like other than obviously Kenneth, like you set a huge tone in that movie, I'm sure, just with
With
Well, and
knowing
it's
who your character
because
was.
because my character doesn't. He so dislikes my character. He so dislikes the people that he works with.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't talk a whole lot, but when he does,
It's
you
scary.
hate him even more. It's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
That
It's
is so
so awesome. So my last question for you, who is in your current playlist?
For music,
For music.
so I don't really have playlists necessarily.
Right.
I listen to so okay, this will show you, this will describe my life for you pretty easily.
Okay. I feel like I
will
know where
go-
this is heading.
Okay, I will go from I like For King and Country, it's a Christian band. There's this guy, For King and Country, Hard Love is it's a beautiful song. Shaylee Simeon, which is another Christian song,
Mhm.
Christian writer. So I listen to like Christian radio, but the
Mhm.
newer stuff. But then I will go from a Christian song, like the song I was baptized to in 2019 was "I Am Who You Say I Am" by Hillsong Worship, which is like out of Australia. They're just a massive.
Oh,
There's
that's
Hillsong
awesome.
Worship and United. They just make wonderful music.
Yeah.
But I'll go from that to Trick Daddy. And then I'll go from Trick Daddy to Tupac, and then I'll go from Tupac back to a nice, comfortable, quiet Christian song.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I was gonna make a playlist, because I'm bad with music. I don't really listen to a whole lot of music, but unless I'm in the car driving like Chicago or something.
Yeah.
But if I was gonna make a playlist, it would be Hillsong United, Hillsong Worship, For King and Country, Trick Daddy, Tupac.
It's pretty good. That's a pretty good mix.
Yeah, exactly. And then
I thought you were gonna say like Baby Shark and stuff like that.
No. Oh, I don't know. If I could listen to that song from Frozen where she's riding the ice horse.
Yes, I know which one you're talking about.
If I could listen to that song over and over again, I would.
When I watched the first movie was great, obviously, but when I was watching the second movie, I was like, these songs are really good. Like these are really
I didn't think they could make it better. The second one
No,
was better than the first one.
I know. I loved it. We actually saw it in the theater, so
That had to be great.
yeah, it was pretty great. Okay, that's a pretty good mix, I'd say. And you know what? I will say that I have flipped onto the Christian station a few times, and I was like, oh my gosh, like.
Yeah, because it's not like it was when I was a kid where everything's all constantly just, it's there's actual music nowadays.
I love that.
Which is nice, yeah.
I love that because obviously, like, religion is scary to some people in the sense of it seems so old and, like, I don't know, dated. But I love that this is all happening and there's kind of like a new wave so that the younger generation can be like, oh yeah, this is super cool. So.
And and I never would have found God, I guarantee, unless there was a place I could go to church where it's not about religion.
Right.
Because religion screwed up faith.
Yeah. Oh,
because
I agree.
It makes you so you think you have to do this, if you don't do this, you're not worthy, if you don't do, and that's not the way it is.
And that's how I felt as a kid, so I completely understand
absolutely.
that feeling. Well, Ben, it was so nice talking to you. Our conversation went like an hour and a half, so
Did it really?
it's going to be a good.
No,
It was
my
so
pleasure.
nice
This was
to meet
great.
you.
Yeah. Do you have anything like coming up? I know you're in the new movie coming out, but do you have anything that you want to kind of let people know about?
You can keep track of, I think I'll be on, I got a quick scene in Chicago PD. I don't know if it's this week or next week. Other than that, look out for Candyman and For Profit and Kenneth Chamberlain.
So many things.
Yeah, exactly.
So many things
like I
coming up.
said.
Yeah,
I'm blessed.
awesome. Well, thank you so much.